Hello again, and welcome to Eye on Opticom, a podcast from Global Traffic Technologies that brings you insightful conversations from around the public safety, law enforcement, and transit industries. We have a great guest on our podcast today, Kristin White, the Chief Operating Officer of the Intelligent Transportation Society of America, or ITS America. She has her JD and is the former Executive Director of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Kristin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on our podcast today.
Oh, Bill, it's a pleasure. I love working with GTT and all of you in this sector, so I'm excited for our conversation today.
What is your mission with ITS America? What would you most like to accomplish with that organization?
Well, I love that you start off with that question, Bill. I think it's so important that we always center ourselves around our personal and vocational and professional missions. So ITS America is the nation's largest nonprofit for transportation mobility technology, and we bring the perspectives of the public, private, and other sectors together. And our mission is a better future transformed by intelligent mobility. And we define that with three pillars: safer, greener, and smarter. And what we mean by that is my team and our sector's mission is to save lives and decrease the increasingly alarming number of road fatalities in our country. Two, to build more sustainable and resilient technologies to advance our climate goals and provide more resilient systems. And third is, under the smarter pillar, to really grow access and opportunity, especially in communities that have been underserved for the past investments in our system. And so with that, our mission really is focused on three main areas of work. We convene thought leaders across sectors to come together with consensus, to really dive in when there's challenging conversations to be had. Two, we promote the collaboration across policy and advocacy on a number of issues related to mobility tech. And the third, which I find really exciting, is we advance research and development partnerships in these conversations. So the goal is to really build relationships and grow support for transportation technology innovation. I would say, Bill, in our conversation, I think it's really critical when we ask questions about what is your organizational mission, I think we should also be asking, what are our personal missions? And one of the things that I think is so interesting in the last 2 years, we've learned that there's this real inception of people trying to align their personal goals with their organizational goals. And then the Venn diagram right in the middle is where they align. And so for me, I just wanted to share that the work of ITS America really aligns with my personal values. I too share a vision. And I actually looked back at my personal vision statement when preparing for today, and it talks about, visionary policy and being a transportation advocate and being a humble and inspiring leader. And I think that's the mission of ITS America and you at GTT, and together in these partnerships, if we can continue to think about those mission and values, we can do anything.
I love your optimistic spirit. Now, you talked about your mission, your personal mission aligning with your professional one. Does that just make going to work every day a little bit easier?
Honestly, it's like a gift. It really is. I understand that I'm really privileged with the ability to do that. Not everyone gets to say they go into work. And I, like probably many of our listeners, have had jobs where it was really a struggle to get up and go in each day, whether it was a manager or the mission didn't align. But I just celebrated a milestone birthday, and we had a little birthday party here at the ITS America offices. And everyone was asking me, well, what kind of gifts are you thinking about? I said, honestly, at a certain age, we stopped talking about gifts and we just recognize what we're grateful for. And one of the best gifts I have is working for an organization with amazing people and in a sector with people like you, right? Where everyone is passionate about something bigger than themselves, right? Saving lives. Like, what an honorable mission that we all have, and we all advance that in different ways. So yeah, it is a joy, it's humbling, it's challenging, but that's why we have conversations like this.
Is now the most important time for you to, you just took on this challenge. Do you feel like the imperative to improve, to save lives? The statistics are out there about the rising accident rate this year post-pandemic. And, obviously climate change isn't going away anytime soon. So did you feel like now was really the right time for you to take on this new challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bill. And when I hear questions like that, it reminds me of these stories about people and their personal lives, like when parents, want to have kids, and the answer is always, there's no time like now, right? There is no right time to do any one thing we want to do. And so there's this really interesting McKinsey study that I was just reading that was launched, and I can share that with folks, but it was a study that talked about how When people make bold choices and go beyond their comfort zone, that's when they reap the most reward, whether that's personally or professionally. I've had the fortune, Bill, of having amazing mentors or people that looked out for me and saw something in me that I didn't. And I think that's really important for all of us in this sector to realize we're all really talented, but many of us don't even see our own talents because we're just so close to the work and task each day. And so I've had mentors that have asked me, for example, my biggest career transition was going from practicing law for a state Department of Transportation into leading an entire new innovation program. I didn't think that was something I'd ever want to do. I didn't think it was something I was capable of, but I had this amazing thought leader and mentor that was like, no, you can do this. You might not be perfect and you might fail, but that's how you learn and grow as a leader. And that's honestly what, again, better mission to do that big change than to save lives and promote sustainability. And when ITS America asked me to look into this position, I certainly wasn't looking. I loved the work that we do in the Midwest and in Minneapolis and Minnesota. But I realized that if I'm really committed to my 2-year-old nephew, Lauren, growing up in a world that he doesn't have issues with air quality, and if I'm really truly committed to my friends in South Minneapolis who are suffering around 2 years after the murder of George Floyd, I can't just talk about change, right? I need to be making that change. And so that's why I took the jump and the leap, right, to move across the country to the heart of policy here in Washington, D.C.
So you reference your work with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, or MNDOT. What did you learn there? What skills did you sharpen there that you think you can apply to this new role as COO of ITS America?
I, again, love that question because I got asked that quite a bit. We were one of the first programs in the country to do this type of deployment and testing with automated vehicles, connected vehicles. Back in the 90s, we had the nation's largest ITS program. Back before the advent of the DARPA challenge, and really realized the importance of automation and connectivity. And so I actually started like a top 10 list because I got this question so many times. And I was actually just looking at that today. And the first one is you still have to develop your own priorities, right? You have to make it your own. And so I came in and had a lot of support, and I said, you know what, we're going to develop a strategic plan, and these are going to be our top 5 priorities. And that was really valuable. 2 is, I think we learn as we age the value of meaningful relationships. And so like getting to meet you and getting to meet members in the ITS sector, and not just meeting, but deepening those relationships. And when I say relationships, I mean it. When like I have people text me, like last night, one of our members was texting me and I was like, that's a really important topic. Let's chat about that. That's why we build these relationships, because this is an important conversation. The third thing is, you can probably sense I'm a talker. I'm a former litigator. I love to chat. So I'm learning to listen, like you're doing a great job now, and to make that space for more junior staff, people who are newer to these discussions, to just air their ideas and feedback and grievances. I've learned to amplify community voices while listening then. So Kristin doesn't need to be chatting. Maybe I need to listen to that community member who's been disenfranchised for a really long time and hear their lived story. Leveraging the experience of others, right? Like you're at GTT, you're an expert in what you do. I don't expect to be an expert in what GTT and others in the IT sector do. So making sure that you're actually leveraging the expertise of others and relying on those experts. One of the things we also learned was right sizing an approach. You know, so we know that in Minnesota, we couldn't be Michigan. We didn't want to be. The auto sector is doing incredible work with the public sector there. But what we could do is focus on equity impacts and sustainability impacts. And Minnesota has a very cold climate, so we could leverage that technology, testing, and innovation. One thing I reflected on too, Bill, is I learned you need to move beyond this concept of P3s or public-private partnerships and move into what I call P4s, a public-private people-based partnership, because then you're leveraging the community, those people, into those partnerships, and you're really getting the benefit of human-centered design, customer-centered solutions when we're talking about technology development. I could go on, but the last thing I would say as I was reflecting on some of the things I learned is we must prioritize performance-based accountability. Regardless of anything we've talked about in the first 20 minutes of our conversation, you need a way to measure your goals and what you're doing and hold yourself accountable on whether you learned, failed, and how you can improve.
Yeah, I mean, everything requires KPIs. Well, what's the balance, do you think, in terms of striking, because obviously technology has real potential and can be tested, but it also, when it comes to transportation and things like that, could have life and death consequences. So how do you strike the right balance between testing sufficiently and also getting things to market in an expedited way where they can start to make a real world impact?
I think it's recognizing there's an absolute important need for both. You have to have spaces where you can test really innovative new ideas, like the DARPA challenge did, right? And it's prescribing, this is what we think we can do. We're not going to tell you how you get there, but what if we could do? It's the big moonshot and testing those moonshot concepts. It's the same thing as ARPA-I in the federal government, right? Really creative, innovative initiatives. But when you've tested those initiatives and they've been validated a few times, you need that path to scale deployment. And that is one thing we are lacking in America compared to other markets globally, is due to the lack of federal leadership and federal national vision, which that's a personal mission of mine and a vision we champion at ITS America. We need paths to deployments for connected vehicles, automated vehicles. It's not enough that you can have a few cars piloting automated vehicle technology in a few markets, because not everyone can benefit from that. So how do we, to my earlier point about learning about right sizing, how do we upsize these approaches and really show the case, the benefits of these technologies whole scale? And that is, Bill, as you reference, it's an area of opportunity for us in the American system.
Speaking of opportunities, and you've kind of spoken to it a little bit, but can you expand on what you view as ITS America's role in helping the industry kind of move forward in some of and sort of make progress on some of these fronts?
Absolutely. The three roles we are advocating for right now and actively championing are: 1, education; 2, advising; and 3, convening different stakeholders together. And so what I mean by that is we are at the cusp of this enormous and historic investment in our infrastructure in America. It's incredible that in 2021, we made a commitment that over the next 5 years, we're investing $1 trillion. What an enormous commitment. And so how do we do that? That's a huge challenge to overcome. And so we developed a plan for ITS America, our members, and the industry. That's a threefold plan to work with the federal governments, including the US DOT and administrative leaders, to do 3 things. 1 is to just educate people. What's in the law? How is the law being implemented? How can you get involved? How can we come to you to hear your feedback? 2 is to advise the DOT. So we just had a great meeting with the head of the Highly Automated Safety Systems Center of Excellence, with their executive director and our members, because the US DOT verbatim noted, we don't have the expertise the industry has. We need to bring that expertise in, and ITS America needs to advise us on what we need to be doing so that we get this right. And the 3rd is continued convening, right? Conversations like this, in-person forum, brainstorming sessions. I keep joking with some of my friends in this industry, we need an Aspen Ideas for mobility technology, where thought leaders who really want to develop that moonshot come together and convene and brainstorm. And then organizations like mine get to run with those ideas and test them out and then deploy them.
Yeah, that would be something. And there's so much that's in the works right now behind the scenes at companies like ours that the future is very exciting when you think about it. Speaking of the future, connected vehicles are very much a part of the future. And so I guess what I'm wondering is, what do you think the potential of connected vehicles and C-V2X is as part of achieving the goals of ITS America?
Saving lives, 100%. We are at a national pandemic, a public health emergency of the number of lives we are losing in vehicle crashes year to year. And if we haven't heard the statistic, it's up over 18% in the last 20 years. It's alarming. It keeps me up at night. And so I think about the stories of just 2 weeks ago, a young 18-year-old in Bethesda, Maryland, was killed riding his bike alongside a busy highway only because he fell into the lane, and that vehicle did not have connected vehicle technology, could not predict, and did not have automated vehicle technology that could not immediately brake. And that young, brilliant man's life was lost needlessly. Connected vehicles are the future. Digital infrastructure and automation are the future. And so we are committed at ITS America to ensuring the federal government knows this is a priority. If they really talk about safety being number 1, which they do at the DOT and in the White House, this is the solution to get there. And so I was just reading a quotation from the FCC's Chairwoman Rosenworcel. She talks about how spectrum is invisible infrastructure. And Bill, one thing we need to remind our colleagues across the country is just because technology like software and connectivity might be invisible doesn't make it undervalued. And so we have to remind them just because you can't see it, it actually means it's probably more important that we invest in broadband and roadside sensors and edge computing and all the connectivity resources, because if we're not using every tool in our toolkit, more lives like that 18-year-olds will be lost.
Right. There is so much potential to, if not reach vision zero, at least kind of, get closer to it, especially for a country like ours, despite the size. What issues do you foresee as still needing to be worked out with connected vehicles? Obviously, there's probably enough we could take up the rest of the podcast with that question, but what do you view as the sort of the most pressing issues that still need to be resolved with connected vehicles?
We see at ITS America these issues as twofold. One is we need the federal government to take a leadership role and to come to consensus decisions. Right now, the US DOT is in a battle with the Federal Communications Commission, and that is not serving American lives and families well. And so we want the US DOT to take a more active role, and they are looking into it. We've had wonderful conversations with Robert Hampshire, who is the Director of Research, the Secretary for Research for Secretary Pete. He's very invested in this, and they're having conversations with other federal agencies like the FCC. So that's great. But the second one is we need to understand the future of this connectivity. So ITS America has convened what we call our Future of V2X, Vehicle to Anything Working Group. And they're understanding, so even with the limitations in the connectivity spectrum, what can we still do? And then looking beyond the existing paradigm. In the new world, it's going to take a combination of existing technologies, new technologies, edge computing, MEC, the cloud-based services, all these new innovations together that create a fabric of connectivity. And we have to figure out what that digital infrastructure and paradigm looks like. So we're looking into that, and we just finished a survey with our membership to dig into what are the tactics that help us get there.
How important do you think vendor interoperability will be to achieve a more connected future?
Critical, absolutely critical. And it's vendor interoperability, it's jurisdictional interoperability. Just as ships cross oceans and planes cross skies, vendors cross jurisdictions, and community members drive through different communities, and technologies go beyond borders. So it's really important that to understand that we take a system of systems approach. And we haven't really done that as a sector other than in the last few years. Right now, we're starting conversations about, well, what does it mean for a roadside unit to talk to a vehicle? Or what does it mean for that vehicle to be able to use a standard that all 50 states can use? What does it mean to have a national system to secure these technologies, to prevent them from attack and harm and malfeasance? So, I love this question because it takes alliances, and really strong public-private partnership to understand that system of systems approach, so that we can ensure that the future of connectivity and anything, quite frankly, is interoperable.
And let's be honest, it's going to take vendors, cities, agencies, everyone involved to sort of think about the greater good, right? In terms of not just, their own sort of self-interest, but thinking about, what is going to be most beneficial to the people we're trying to serve.
Bill, I love that. And I know GTT values this so much in your corporate philosophy, but I think what we're seeing in the last few years is a trend towards using corporate social responsibility, CSR goals, across public, private, and community spheres. Same thing, now people are talking about with the administration's focus on electrification, ESG, environmentally and sustainable goals, and committing to them publicly, so that, to your point, whether you're a public organization, a private organization, or even a nonprofit, you're committing to benefiting community members in ways we haven't really had in social dialogue in the past.
Yeah, no question. And it's those conversations, at least those conversations are being had, right? I mean, it's that's always the first step in terms of, beneficial change and progress, right?
Absolutely.
Obviously, we don't live in a perfect world, but ideally, what does mobility look like to you in 10 to 20 years?
I would love a podcast where we ask that question to all of our members. I look forward to that with you, Bill. I will start with, before I answer the question, one of the things I like to talk about when I talk to our different members is this empirical research that shows that humans are terrible at predicting the future. And what I mean by that is we're actually really good at visioning what the future could look like. We're really good visionaries at the human mind. We're actually really terrible with predicting when those visions will take place. So a good example is in 1939 at the World's Fair, they actually predicted a world where everything would be autonomous and connected and self-driving vehicles would be everywhere. But they also predicted that that would take place 100 years ago. So we're a little behind.
Yeah.
But my vision, and I think one we can all collectively strive for, is a national vision, a documented national vision that incorporates mobility technology like automation, connectivity, smart infrastructure, resiliency, mobility innovations. And we have a national vision, a North Star moonshot that defines where we're going to be. And it has a mission and tactical goals that help us understand how to get there. And I think that that can be kind of indicative of what I led when I was a part of AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. We led a national dialogue on what we felt the state DOTs that national vision could look like. And we brought in different stakeholders from freight and from planning and from cities and from research. And in that vision, we knew that the vision of innovation in mobility technology had to include, first and foremost, safety. But it also had to see the intersection of safe, environmental, equitable technology advancement, not in siloed, but together. That vision included ensuring that we have performance measures and accountability to this work, so that we have ways to show communities the investment we're making really is truly benefiting you. And if it isn't, let's go back to the drawing board. So it's that concept of human-centered design. In thinking about it, Bill, I think my personal vision then for future mobility is stronger leadership, that unified national vision, a strategy to implement those ideas, and outcomes to show why we're investing billions of dollars in mobility. And I think ITS America and members like you can be a leader of that vision. The tech sector, government, communities, nonprofits, individual community members, we owe it to them to be listening to them as we develop this vision. But we also need to demand from our federal leaders. The US DOT needs to be taking that leadership role and really championing this work with all of us so that our moonshot that I just talked about, by 2050, we will have a vision zero approach. There will no longer be lives lost, and it will happen because of innovative transportation technologies.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to take a lot of stakeholder buy-in and a lot of willingness to sort of come together towards the common goal that we all share. Thank you so much for your time today, Kristin. Just one last question for you. How would ITS America like to see companies like GTT be involved with ITS?
We love companies to be involved as much or as little as they like. So we would love for folks to sign up on our website and get newsletters and information. Join one of our 6 standing advisory committees on any of the topics we talked about today. If you want leadership and to, grow your profile, become a leader on those committees and working groups, become a part of our board. We need new, fresh, emerging voices because it can't just be the people that have been doing this 30 and 40 years. We need all the new thought leaders and innovators to join our conversation. So lastly, I would just say, join us at the 2022 World Congress. I'm hoping we can do this podcast there, Bill, and we can have folks join us in Los Angeles, September 18th through 22nd.
Yeah, it's gonna be a heck of an event, and it's gonna be just nice to get everyone back together and sort of talking about the future of transportation and what it might look like. Kristin, this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was really insightful and just a great conversation, and really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Bill, thank you. We appreciate you and your leadership, and it's always a thrill to be with you.
That was ITS America COO Kristin White discussing CV2X, the direction of ITS America, and the future of mobility. Thank you for downloading today's episode. To listen to past episodes, visit gtt.com/podcast or search for Eye on Opticom on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, I'm Bill Huff.